Hello everyone, it's Taylor, and today I'm going to be talking about my birth experience, giving birth to a preemie. I have all of his discharge papers and everything here, which is kind of weird because he's 4 years old now, and yes, I still have all of his discharge papers from a NICU. Let's start at 6 months. So I was 6 months pregnant when I went in for a checkup, and they checked my cervix and they checked everything. And everything was fine at 6 months. And then I went in for a follow-up ultrasound to get some other measurements that they couldn't get because he was turned the wrong way or whatever the case was. And she says to me, "Why is your cervix open?" And I'm like, "I don't know why my cervix is open. You're the ultrasound technician, so you should know why my cervix is open." So she ended up calling her supervisor, and she said, "Hey, come take a look at this." So then it was just ended up being 3 people in the room looking at my ultrasound, saying, "You need to go to the hospital like right now." And I'm like, "What's going on?" I mean, I didn't feel any pain. I didn't feel any different than I had ever felt. So I just thought everything was fine. The supervisor, she said, "Where are you giving birth?" And I said, Washington Hospital Center. And then she said, "No, go to Holy Cross." And I'm like, "I don't get why." And then she said, "Because they have a very good NICU unit there." And I'm like, "Why are we thinking about NICU units?" Like, it didn't register to me what was going on, just because I felt okay. So when I got to the NICU unit, so when I got to the hospital, all these people came rushing in. They were like, "How did you get here? Were you in an ambulance?" And I'm like, "No, my boyfriend brought me." She was in there with a flashlight, like, "Let me take a look to see what's going on." And I'm like, man, this is like some serious stuff. Now, I'm a biology major. I know a few things. And I think because it happened so fast and because I wasn't in any pain, I just wasn't reacting the way they wanted me to. And I'm just like, I don't know what's going on. Like, this can't be real. Maybe that's what I was in shock. This can't be real. The baby's fine. You know, I feel fine. The baby's fine. Everything is fine. So finally, they came up with that I had a short cervix. My cervix was supposed to be like this, and it was kind of like this. Like, you can, it's not supposed to be, I'm 6 months pregnant. It's not supposed to be open until you're in labor giving birth. Your cervix doesn't open until you start having contractions. I didn't have any Braxton Hicks contractions. I didn't have any type of pain. My pregnancy was fine. Everything was fine. I didn't feel any pain at all. After that, I was admitted to the hospital in the high risk pregnancy unit. I was there for about 2 weeks. The doctors wanted to make sure that I wasn't funneling, or Xavier wasn't funneling. But when they did the ultrasound to check, his foot was literally like, he was like pushing his foot down out of my cervix. So the tip of his toe was literally outside of my cervix. So that was like horrifying. To see it on the ultrasound, I think, was a little more scary than like anything. It was crazy. He was outside of my body before I gave birth to him, which is kind of weird to think about, but that's essentially what was going on. I mean, yes, he was still inside of my body, but like, to see that part of my uterus was protruding out of my cervix way before it was time for me to give birth to him was horrifying. And at that point, that's when it hit me, and I just got really emotional. And I mean, I'm already emotional because I'm 6 months pregnant, but I was really emotional because I didn't know, like, am I going to lose him? Is he going to make it? I mean, they keep babies at 6 months. They fight for babies at 6 months old. But I don't know, your mind starts to go in the worst place. I don't know, it starts to go in the worst places, and that's when you really just kind of have to, you have to get positivity from somewhere. So wherever that place is, that's where you have to go. Your optimism, you have to get that place from somewhere. I'm a Christian, so that's where I get my positivity from. Whatever your source of positivity is, you really need that source abundantly when you're going through something like this. After the 2 weeks, they actually let me go home. I was to go to see a new doctor, so I wasn't seeing my normal OB. I went to go to a specialist for high-risk pregnancy. So this OBGYN, he was amazing, and he just specialized in only high-risk pregnancies. That's all he did, and I loved him. It's so great when you love your doctor. He was great, and I mean like so great, if you know what I mean. So yeah, so I went to him for about 9.5 weeks. And he prescribed me, what was the medication called? Microgestin. And the Microgestin was to keep me from going into labor and to keep me from having contractions. And it was a deposit, so I had to insert it. It was like a little oval pill about this big, and I had to insert it. And it was the messiest, like the messiest pill ever. It would... So once it's up in there, it starts to dissolve itself with all your, your stuff you got down there. Then it would, obviously it would come out if it didn't totally dissolve the whole thing. Okay, this is just weird. I was on Microgestin, and then he also put me on aspirin and 1 gallon of water a day. Oh, and he also put me on moderate bed rest. This meant that I was able to get up and use the bathroom. I could drive to the doctor's, obviously, but I couldn't do anything else. So for me, that meant I had to withdraw from all of my classes. I was taking classes on campus. I had to medically withdraw from all of my courses. I had to cut out a lot of social things that I was involved in, and it was difficult. So being on bed rest is definitely kind of a bittersweet, and you get the sweet part after you have the baby and you're not in bed, but just being in bed by yourself all day and there's nothing to do but to read and watch TV and blah blah blah. And now I'm taking online classes. Oh my goodness. Wouldn't it have been brilliant if I was taking online classes back then? That would have been perfect. But of course, hindsight is 20/20. So I was on bed rest for that 9.5 weeks. Then the UPS man comes. The UPS man changed my life. I went downstairs, which I was only supposed to do when I was going to doctor's appointments. I was only supposed to go up and down the steps if completely necessary, which in my case was only for doctor's appointments. Food and stuff, my boyfriend would bring everything upstairs, and then he would come home sometimes during the day. My grandmother would come, so it was like food wasn't a big thing. We kind of had that covered. But when that UPS man came with my baby stuff, so I went down to sign for the package. And I go back upstairs and I go use the bathroom. So I remember this because I was on the phone with my mom while I was going down the steps. And when I came back up the steps and went to the bathroom and used the bathroom, I was done using the bathroom, but it was still some stuff coming out. And I'm like, no, I'm done peeing. No, I'm done peeing. And I'm like hyperventilating, Mom, my water broke. And she's like, and it's so funny because when either of us, me and my sister, when we like start to freak out, she's like, okay, shut up. Okay, what's going on? Where's Tom? That's my boyfriend. Where's Tom? I'm like, he just left. Call him. I'm on my way to the hospital. So I called Tom. I'm like, Tom, my water just broke. And he was like, are you serious? okay, bye. And he just gets off the phone. And I'm like, hello! I can laugh about it now, but back then I was really freaked out and I'm crying and I'm hysterical and it's horrible because I'm like, no, he's not ready yet. He's not ready yet. At this point, I was 33 weeks and 4 days. They were trying to get me to 33 weeks, 34 weeks. That was the goal. Get her to 34 weeks. I was 33 weeks and 4 days. When I got to the hospital, my mom was already there, of course. I don't know. We lived like so much closer to the hospital than her, and somehow she got there before us. And my doctor, Dr. Lipster, she was there and she checked me out and everything. And so then I was readmitted to the hospital. At that point, they were trying to avoid infection, and they kept me, what is it called? I can't remember what it's called, but when they have you laying like, so your feet are in the air and the lower half of your body is kind of lower than the rest of your body, to keep your fluids, keep all of your uterine fluids inside as long as possible, because at this point your water has already broken. They had me laying like that for, I want to say, was it 2 days? It was 2 days, because they didn't want any infection or anything like that to happen, so they couldn't have me like that until I got to the whole 34 weeks. I went into labor and I started getting contractions, and the contractions were bad, but they weren't that bad. I didn't have any epidural or any type of pain medication beforehand, just because everything happened so quickly. Because you remember, my cervix was already open to, like, what did they say? Was it 1.5 or 2 centimeters dilated before I even like got into the hospital? So you know how they say those first centimeters are always the most difficult, and while you're in labor. So I was already past that. So my contractions only lasted a few hours before it was time for me to go in and start pushing. And 4 pushes and that little baby was out. He popped right out. One thing about not having epidural is that, I mean, I've never had an epidural because this is my first baby, but one thing about having epidural, at least what the nurses and the doctor told me, is that you can't feel your body's natural sensation to want to push. So it becomes a little more difficult because you can't feel yourself. I can't explain it, but you can't feel yourself. When I was pushing him out, I could feel my body saying, okay, baby, come out. I can feel him coming out. So that was one thing about not having any medications. So he came out and he was 4 pounds, 3 ounces. He was the cutest little nugget. I mean, so tiny. And this was my first baby, so he didn't seem so small to me because this is my first baby. You know what I mean? I mean, I've seen newborns, but when you see newborns, they're usually at home already, so they're normally like a couple weeks old, so it doesn't really, but I've never seen like a baby fresh out the womb baby. The littlest thing, and he was perfect. He got all 10s on his APGAR, except for 1, and that was a 9, and I can't remember which one that was. His breathing was fine. He didn't have any breathing problems. They did have to give me steroid shots in my backside to help his lungs develop. So fast forward back to after I give birth to him, he was perfect. He was just small. He was a perfect little package, but he was just tiny. He was admitted to the NICU unit. That was difficult to see all those little babies in there, and some of them, weren't doing as well as others, but a happy place at the same time because the nurses are doing everything they can to make sure that your baby is taken care of. First week in the NICU unit, they were just trying to get him to eat and to eat on his own. I tried to breastfeed him but he wouldn't latch on the first week. So the nurse ended up suggesting a nipple guard. So she had one to give me, so she gave me a nipple guard, and that helped him latch on. The problem was that he would get tired so fast and he wouldn't get enough milk. So they ended up having to bottle feed him. I ended up having to bottle feed him. The milk was my breast milk, but they just put him in the bottles. And then after a day or so, he started to get tired for bottle feeding. So then they had to put a tube in to make sure he was getting enough colostrum. So after the first week was over and then we went into the second week, he pulls his tube out of his nose and says, "No, I can feed myself." He pulls his tube out himself, and after he pulls his tube out, he actually starts to eat well on his own. He even latched on. He latched on to me fine. So 3 or 4 days into the second week, he was about 4 pounds 8 or 9 ounces. He was really doing well. He started to regulate his own temperature. Didn't have to worry about him getting too cold too soon. He did suffer from jaundice, so they did have to put the lights over him, and that was for a couple of days. And you know, his dad is a pretty yellow guy, so I can see why he, you know, got jaundice. But even babies that aren't preemies get jaundice. That wasn't a big concern for anyone, but the eating was a big concern, and the fact that he started eating on his own and regulating his own temperature. And also when they did the car seat test, was the nurses putting him in the car seat and monitoring his heart rate and his breathing and everything like that while he was sitting in his car seat to make sure that he wouldn't be put into any type of distress while traveling, you know, home from the hospital. So he passed his car seat test about 2 days before the end of the second week, and the minimum stay is 2 weeks. So I was so proud of him. He didn't have any breathing problems. He didn't have any problems, you know, eating after that 2 weeks was over. His jaundice had cleared up and he pooped it right out, and he was flourishing. And it was great to see that, you know, after such a long and like hard pregnancy, that he was okay. And now he's 4 years old. He is in the 90 something percentile for height. Since he's so tall, his weight it's probably like in the 60 or 70 or something like that percentile, just because of his height or his length. And he's just doing so well. I'm just here to tell you moms out there who are on bed rest and who are expected to give birth early, whether it be because you have twins or whether it's like my situation, you have a short cervix, or if you have an injury or whatever the case is, that these doctors and nurses know what they're doing. And as long as you follow their instructions, you know, instructions like eating your fruits and vegetables and drinking plenty of water, because as soon as you become dehydrated, that's when you start having a lot of complications. And also making sure that you're gentle on your body during this time. Just stay positive and everything will be okay. I got to a point where I felt like maybe he won't be okay. But he's okay. He's okay. He's smart as a whip. He doesn't have any breathing problems. He's not asthmatic or any of the things that they tell you that are going to happen when you have a preemie. Don't always expect for those things to happen straight away. When you get to that challenge, you deal with the challenge. Don't put so much stress on yourself to deal with something that you don't even know is gonna happen yet. And that's something that I wish I would have done, not to focus so much on that long list of, you know, things that they say are going to happen to your preemie, like, you know, breathing complications, blah, 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 blah. But don't focus on those things. Focus on your health. Focus on the health of your baby, and focus on just being positive, and you should be fine. So if you made it to the end, thank you so much for watching. I don't think I'm going to be able to put a picture of Xavier here just because my iMovie won't let me. But if you want to see him now, you can go to my Instagram, which is at lavenderfog1. And all of my information is in the bottom bar. If you have any questions at all, I know I was rambling a lot, so I may have left some things out, like little details. If you have any questions at all, leave them in the comment box below. And of course, hit subscribe. If you want to see more, hit subscribe. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!